All right. Hello, Internet. Welcome to Travail Office Hours. Today is Tuesday, June 27th. This is our fourth installment and also our last installment before the first event in 10 days. Yeah. 10 days from now, we'll be doing check in. So tonight, you can see that our sort of opening page here, right? We'll talk about prestige paths first. Then we'll go over the comprehensive effects list listed at the end of the rule book. And then we'll go over any questions that people have. And we might even end early, which is wild and probably won't happen, but you never know. All right. Just going to give, I started like a minute late. Apologies, but give people another like minute or two to roll in, and then we will go ahead and get started. Everything, if people are waiting on responses for like things that have been submitted to the wiki, everything except I think like there's like one unapproved page out there right now, but I think that'll be approved tonight. Everybody else's worlds and characters, everything that's been sent in is approved. If people log in and use the menu at the top of the page, you should be able to see that like your character history is there and approved. It should show up on the list for you. If you submitted characters, like actually created characters, character sheets aren't up yet. I'm going to do those all in a batch at some point in the next week because there's some sort of manual process involved there. Not that there's there's not a whole lot to see or modify there between now and the first event anyway. Hello to everyone that's sort of checking in here. I hope that folks maybe have been able to watch some of the older videos too, because we're going to talk about sort of like more complicated stuff to begin with here on these lists. And then we'll just go back and like do a run through of the effects list. So after tonight, there will be descriptions online in video form of everything, everything in the rule book, really. Oh, we might, if we have like 10 minutes, I'll go through the crafting section real quick, but it's pretty self-explanatory and will make a lot more sense when people see it during the event anyway. So, all right, that's enough sort of soft shoe that I've done over here to buy a couple of minutes to see if we're gonna show up. All right, great. So yeah, like usual, if people have questions at any point, you can drop them in chat. If you'd like to submit questions anonymously, there's a link in the video description that'll take you to a Slido room where you can drop a question in anonymously, and I have that link open. I'll keep an eye on that. Yeah, what else? I think that's it for now. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so prestige paths are something that everyone will have access to as long as you have played the combination of path and subpath that you chose for the event at least once before. So on the character sheets, there's a value for prestige potential, which tells you how many levels into a prestige path you could have access to during an event. That value starts at 0 for all possible combinations, and increases by 1 in that specific combination for each event that you play. So let's say first event next weekend, you're like, you know what, I'm gonna do Fighter Slayer as my path and specialization, and then I'm gonna do Magic User Erudite as my subpath and specialization. So you, after that event, you'll earn 1 prestige potential in Fighter Magic User, right? It doesn't care about the specializations. We just care about the paths. Um, also, fighter magic user and magic user fighter are the same for purposes of prestige paths. And so there's sort of like an option on here. Right now there's two options for prestige paths. For each combination, there's what, three, four, five, six total combinations of paths. And I mean, you'll notice I said for now, right? We can always there's always something new to find out there. Um, always something extra to be able to do. Um, and uh, so for the first event that you play your character, most people, unless you picked the prodigious heritage, which gives you one prestige potential in each of the combinations at character creation. But most people won't have access to a prestige path their first event. Um, so in the example, right, I pick fighter magic user. After the first event, I have one prestige potential there. So after that, every event that I play after that, if I do fighter magic user or magic user fighter, I can also pick one of the prestige paths that's connected to fighter magic user. Oh, this still says fighter main. That's a typo. That's why we're doing. That's part of why we're doing this. Catching typos. All right. Let me make a note here. This is page 29. Change title to fighter/magic user, and then a subnote to check for references to term mage. All right. Look at that. All right. So that's good. Right. So if it's my second event now, I have one prestige potential in fighter magic user. I pick magic user as my path this time, and I pick adept. And then I pick fighter vanguard as my subpath and specialization. And now I can pick either war mage or spell sword as a prestige path, and I will get the first level of that because I have one prestige potential. That tells me how many levels of that prestige path I'll have access to during that event. So if I pick war mage, I'll get a new basic lone return packet. And if I pick spell sword instead, I'll get a basic for melee to fire, ice, or lightning, chosen at time of use. And we'll like get into what all of these things do in a second. But yeah, that is how prestige paths work. And so then after that second event, I'll get another prestige potential in fighter magic user. And then I'll have two. And so the next time I play that combination, I'll have two levels in there. And so after you play a combination for 5 events, then you stop earning prestige potential in that combination of paths after 5 games. But then whenever you play that, you can pick one and you'll get all 5 levels of access there, regardless of which one's your path and which one's your subpath or what specializations you pick for the event or whatever. You'll have all 5 levels of the prestige path abilities. All right, so now that we sort of talked about how we're going to get access to these abilities, let's talk about what they do. So as folks have probably noticed, all of the core path ability lists from levels 1 to 10 get basics, complexes, ultimates, and attributes at the same levels. So like level 1 on devout, on the devout core list, right, is a basic. Level 1 on the magic user, scoundrel, and fighter core ability list is also a basic. And the same is true for all 10 levels of the core lists. And then all specializations, right? The first level 1 of a specialization is a complex, level 2 of a specialization is an ultimate. This is done in a very specific way so that folks from character creation have basics, complexes, and ultimates always, right? So every event starting from your first event, you'll be using basics, you'll be using complexes, you'll be using ultimates. You'll just gain more options as you play more events, and you earn potential and prestige potential. You'll have more options to use with your stuff, and then you'll get attributes that'll make you better at certain things than others. But yeah. Okay. So in that same vein, right? Prestige paths are basic, complex, ultimate attribute from levels 1 to 5. And that's the case for all of them. So you get one basic, two complexes, an ultimate, and an attribute. And so for Blade Dancer is sort of the fighter with a scoundrel twist on it. And then Raquel is the or Rake. The Rake is like a scoundrel list with like sort of a fighter bend to it a little bit. Little looser on that description, but and we'll go over what what all of that means. But that's the basic idea for why for the two of them. Is one of them is sort of like primarily like a fighter that does some scoundrel stuff, and the other one's like primarily a scoundrel that maybe does some fighter stuff or just sort of like leans into a different sort of like style of ability use there. All right, so Blade Dancer 1, lone return melee. So return is the call, right? We know that return is a limited form of the no effect call. And this can be used against any melee attack. Anytime we see melee, it means non-backstab. And that'll get cleared up somewhere. I think there's an explanation of that somewhere in here, but we'll sort of clear that up too. Unless something says that it works against backstabs, it doesn't. That's sort of just like our that's our level set. And so like right now it's pretty much just like dodge. If you have a dodge, it works against a backstab. Or if you're resisting a specific effect, like if you have a resist pain and something hits you with like a backstab short pain, and you're like, oh, I can resist pain, then you can use it against that. But for things that are like, oh, this works against anything that's a melee attack, that'll be non-backstab. So this is once per set of basics that you have, right? Lone means once per set of ability uses of that type. So you need to like refresh all of your basics. Once you do this, you need to refresh all your basics before you do it again, whether that's because you took a minute or you had an effect used on you that says refresh all basic. That would let you use the lone ability again. So once per set of basics, you can spend a basic to call return to a melee attack that hits you. So this is like pretty powerful stuff, right? You can make somebody land their attack again. That's really what return does, right? Because return will be a limited call, it's a limited defense, right? A finite defense, and then it gives the user their skill back, right? So it doesn't spend up. So if someone's like, oh, 5 damage, and you call return, they get their 5 damage back, but it didn't work on you this time, so now they have to land it again, right? And in our system, as soon as once you call the out of game effect, the ability's spent, whether it connects or not. So you make them land it twice with a return, basically. Or if you have multiple returns, you can make them land it, over and over and over. And if they miss any one of those, then you negated it, right? It's sort of like a half of an avoidance. Gives you another shot to block the attack or move out of the way or something. So Blade Dancer level 2 is a counter ability called Counter Packet. Lets you spend a complex to counter any packet attack that hits you or anyone within reach of you, like within your weapon's reach around you, or like I guess within like arm's reach if they're on the other side of you or something. But yeah, basically anybody that you could reach with your weapon, if they're around you and a packet hits them, you can spend a complex and called Counter Packet, and you can avoid that attack for them, right? That's an avoidance you can use for someone else. Also, if you can use it for yourself, let's say like you don't have parries, but you do have Counter Packet, you could call Counter Packet for something that hits you. So you're able to sort of protect either yourself or somebody around you from a packet attack for a complex. At level 3, so this is another lone ability for a complex. Is a melee 2 damage flurry that gives you 5 swings of 2 damage to use over the course of the next minute. This shows up on the fighter core list as an ultimate, but fighter core also gets an attribute that gives you melee 2 damage tenacity. So in general, when you're a fighter and you use this, you're going to get 10 2 damages, not 5. But there's a chance that, if you're like, if you have a lot of magic user and not a lot of fighter, but you have 3 levels in here, then you could end up, you can end up with just 5, but 5 2s for a complex is still pretty good. That's still very good, really. Level 4, you get an ultimate, a backstab harrow. So backstabs, right, have to be delivered from behind the midline and have to strike somebody in the rear half, the rear half of the body. And the harrow effect, it's not short here, so it lasts for a minute, and it means that the next time that the target takes hit point damage, it will reduce them to 0 hit points. So unless they have avoidances or they can soak damages or they have armor, right, temporary armor points from a grant effect, then basically the next hit will drop them to 0. And then at 5, you get an attribute for parry tenacity. So tenacity as an attribute means that whenever you use whatever the effect or ability is that's listed, before the word tenacity, you get another one for free in the next 10 seconds. And it has to be the next. I think it has to be the next thing that you do as well. Let me pull up a second copy of things to just double check. We've been sort of refining things over the last couple weeks. So let's see. Find me tenacity. Lots of instances of it in the rulebook. All right. Allows the stated ability or effect to be used an additional time without expending another ability usage. For use of the ability or effect must be the next one used and must be used within 10 seconds. All right, cool. Exactly. That's what I thought. So with that, anytime you call a parry, you get another one for free in the next 10 seconds, as long as you don't use another effect or ability between those parry calls. So also very good. May not be useful 100% of the time, but you can always just like parry a regular hit if you're about to lose it. So yeah, that is Blade Dancer. And let's see. All right, so now we move on to Raquel, which is a little more sort of complicated and situational. Whereas Blade Dancer is just sort of like gives you additional sort of combat options all the time, the Rake wants to wield poisons. That is sort of like the thing that they want to be doing, is wielding poisons. So where Blade Dancer got Lone Return Melee as a basic, the Rake gets Lone Return Poison. So any poison call, whether it's whether that's melee or packet or even a backstab here, right? Because it's not calling out a specific delivery mechanism. So if you get hit with like a poison backstab 5, you could call return to that, right? But still it's once per minute, right? Once per set of basics, which is functionally going to be usually like once per minute or so. You spend a basic, you call return to a poison attack, make them land it again. So now at level 2, there's a complex, and this is, I think, the first instance we've seen of this call in the rulebook, of the absorb call. And so anytime the Rake gets hit with a poison attack, anything with the word poison in it, they can spend a complex to absorb it and then bestow themselves either a backstab 5 or a backstab maim. And so you would have to not have a you'd have to have a bestowment sort of like slot, right, available for that. So for bestowments, you get like one defensive ability, right, a dodge, a parry, resist, and then you get one non-avoidance ability, right? And so this could be your non-avoidance ability. Let's say you don't have something bestowed on you. You get hit with a packet for even like poison death or something, right? You can call absorb, and you don't have to do You don't have to say anything else. You could say like absorb to self bestow, right? Like backstab 5 or something. But and like enemies and monsters might like give you a little more context, right? Like if there's like a fire creature and you hit it for like 5 fire, it might say you like absorb to heal 5. Um so but yeah, otherwise, right, this is an active defense. You spend a complex. I mean, you can still absorb the poison, and even if let's say you have like a something better than either of those bestowments on, you could still call it to absorb, and avoid the effect, right? But and then just choose to not have that bestowment override your current one. So it's a very good defense against poison all the time, sort of an all the time defense against poison. Level 3 um, lets you um, use any poison effect that you have once per hour. You spend a complex. You turn any other poison effect that you would use into a backstab poison 10. So, what does this mean? What this really translates to is that um, there aren't many things in the book, in the rule book, that give you a poison attack, right? We've looked through the lists, and there's really like, I think there's like 2 of them that are like actual poison attacks that show up in here. Um, so most of the time, poisons are going to come from items. They're going to come from expendable items, right? Consumables that give, and for the most part, it's going to be like a weapon poison. You're going to put it on your weapon. And so this lets you spend a complex to turn whatever weapon poison it is that you just put on your weapon into a backstab poison 10, which is real good. Right? Normally a complex doesn't get you a 10 damage attack. And so this would also let you I guess there's some poisons that aren't that are sort of like used on demand, right? As opposed to like putting like a bestowment or sorry, it's like grant weapon, touch grant weapon, like poison, inflict 2. I think that's like our common one here. I can actually, I can just show it. I can just show you what the item cards are going to look like. What is it? Here's one. Let me just adjust the capture here. So here's let's see. Add window capture. Where are you? No, we don't like that. Really? Hello? I mean, it really doesn't want to show up, huh? Weird. Okay. I guess I'm not going to show you. I don't know. Um, all right. So it's a card that says Lesser Blade Venom. It's a level 1 poison, and the effect that you can expend this item to use the ability Touch grant weapon. Uh, Melee inflict 2. Okay. That might be a typo. Yeah. Okay. Oh, no. That's not a typo. That's all right. It's not a typo, it's a bad example. the Right. So those blade ones just give a non-poison inflict 2 swing. So It'd be really nice if this showed up here so that I could show it, but it really doesn't want to. Wild. All right. So better example is this other card that this other item is like a touch grant weapon melee poison effect, right? And so grant weapon would mean that you're giving the weapon something that it does on the next swing that you make it, right? The next time you attack with that weapon, it now has another effect that it's going to do. And like that like has to be the next thing that weapon does. So in this instance, if you have a weapon that gets like a, grant weapon like melee poison whatever, or backstab poison something, then you can spend the rake can expend a complex to turn that into a backstab poison 10 instead of whatever that other effect was, right? So you're spending the item plus a complex to do this other effect. And then at level 4, you get sort of the next iteration of that, which is like spend an ultimate once per twilight only, right? Or once per set of ultimates that you have. You really probably, well, there's one thing in the rulebook that does like a refresh all ultimate. It's on Hierophant, but that will probably be relatively rare for you to get. So it'd be like once per twilight, you can turn one of your poisons into a backstab poison death. And then at level 5, the attribute level 1 poison tenacity. So all of the item cards, which I really like to show you, but the capture OBS isn't picking them up. So yeah, I'll figure it out. I'll find a way to show them at some point on the stream. Even if it means I have to go downstairs and get them, and then everyone can look at them backwards in the camera or something. But so what that means is that every consumable item in the game has the level and then the kind of item that it is. So in the example of our like lesser blade poison that we just talked about, it gives you the name of it, lesser blade venom, and then underneath that it says level 1 poison. So anytime you see level 1 poison and you're a rake with all 5 levels of abilities, you're going to be able to use that twice. And so that could mean like you can apply a blade poison, right? You can do like if it's like a touch grant weapon, you could do that to 2 different weapons, right? You do it to one and then do it to another one within 10 seconds. If it's a packet, you can throw the packet and then throw another packet, right, for the same thing. So anything that says level 1 poison on it, that's a consumable item. You get 2 uses out of, right? Yeah, so you sort of get like, you get double on all the most basic poisons. You get double, so you could put one on your weapon and then put one on your buddy's weapon, right? Throw 2 packets. There might be some other crazy poison stuff to find out there. So yeah, the characters who take the rake prestige path are going to be interested in either crafting their own poisons or having someone else craft them poisons, or getting their hands on them in some capacity, because they help fuel your abilities. All right, fighter magic user. No, it says fighter mage. Should say fighter magic user. So 2 on here. The war mage is sort of like the magic user that is now like getting into the fighter stuff, and then spell sword is like the fighter who's getting into the magic user stuff. So war mage at level 1 gets lone return packet, right? So we had lone return melee, lone return poison. War mage gets lone return packet. So once a minute when a packet hits you, you can call return and make them land it again. At the second level, you get melee and packet magic 2 damage flurry. And so there's a note here that says that this gives you 5 uses of packet magic 2 damage, and it's quick cast because flurries of magic abilities give you quick cast. And it also gives you 5 melee magic 2 damages. So you get 5 of the packets, 5 of the melee hits, all for a single complex. It is a magic ability, so you do have to incant it beforehand, but it's just the regular incant rules, right? 7 syllables, right? You know, I call down arcane power to flow through me or something, right? And then you get 5 of those and 5 of those. It's a good time. And so if you're a fighter with the melee 2 tenacity, then you could double up, right? You could double up the magic 2 damages that you're doing in melee. And then on magic user, you get the ability to double up on the 2 damage packets. I don't think you can do both. If you can do both, it'll get changed at some point. The intention is you can maybe get like 10 and 5, but not like 10 and 10 for a single complex. But yeah, War Mage gets just like a bunch of 2s for a complex. But they are magic, so magic may or may not be more or less effective against certain things. So at 3, very potent ability for any magic users, right? Resisting silence effects. So you can resist any silence effect from any source by spending a complex. We'll talk about silence a little later, but silence not only stops you from making verbal sound, but also prevents you from using any magic type effects, magic type abilities or effects. At 4, we get a short ritual self refresh all complex for an ultimate. So this requires you to take 10 seconds, 10 uninterrupted seconds, and then you can refresh all of your complexes by spending an ultimate. And then at 5, as the attribute, as a ritual, not a short ritual. So this is a ritual. It takes you 1 full uninterrupted minute. You can grant yourself a resist magic. So basically, every fight you go into, if you don't have a grant for a resist of some other kind, you'll have a resist magic, and that'll be a passive resist magic against the first effect that hits you with the magic call. And that's War Mage. War Mage is the caster who wants to wade into combat, but still be doing a good amount of actual casting. All right, and now Spell Sword. Level 1 is a basic melee 2 fire, 2 ice, or 2 lightning. That's chosen at the time of use. So you could like, if you're trying to like figure out if an energy like works better or worse on against a creature or something, right? You can call 2 fire, and maybe they're like, oh, you know, like reduce. You're like, oh, maybe fire's not good. All right, 2 ice, and they just kind of like, you know, react, you know, normally. And then, you know, 2 lightning, and they like, you know, start like running away or something, and you're like, okay, maybe lightning's good today. But and so all of those can be the fighter melee 2 tenacity applies to all of those as well. So because it's a melee 2 something, right? The fighter melee 2 tenacity would apply. Level 2, same thing, but you spend a complex to do 5 points of damage instead. Level 3 is a lone complex, so you spend a complex once per hour or once per set of complexes. You can call parry to a magic effect, and then you can also refresh all your basics. So and parry works against melee and packet abilities, not backstabs, right? We talked about parry doesn't work on backstabs, but if you get hit with a packet for like, I don't know, magic death, magic paralyze or something, you can call parry, and then you can also then you call parry, and then you call refresh all basic, and then you get all your basics back. But that's once per hour. You can use your avoidance to do that. As an ultimate, you get magic paralyze, a full 1 minute paralyze, and it's quick cast. That's in the wrong order. It doesn't matter though. Everybody, whether it says quick cast melee or melee quick cast, everybody knows what it means. But it's so no incant for that. You just call magic paralyze. Spend an ultimate, call magic paralyze, swing it at somebody in melee. And then at 5, the attribute, this is sort of like the key keynote ability on here. Packet magic as quick cast melee magic. So any packet magic effect that you can use, you can instead use as a quick cast melee swing. So let's take a quick look at magic user, right? So that's special, those are specializations, right? So here, right, you can turn those basic level 1, you can turn the magic 2 damage packet into magic 2 damage melee swing. What else is on here? At 8, the packet for magic short fear, you can call magic short fear instead, with a melee weapon. At 10, magic sleep, you just call magic sleep. Even though those two aren't quick cast, they turn into quick cast abilities. And then on some of the specializations here, right, there's a magic 2 damage flurry. You could use those as melee hits instead. The only thing to keep in mind here, right, is that tenacity won't apply to any of these that you turn into melee, regardless of what anything else has, right? 2 attributes can't apply to like the same ability use or set of ability uses. So you can't turn your packet magic 2 damage into a melee magic 2 damage and then also use either the packet magic 2 damage tenacity or the melee 2 tenacity, right? Neither of them can apply because you already applied an attribute to the ability. You can't apply another one to it. So yeah, any of the stuff on here that is packet magic something, which is a bunch of stuff on all of the specializations, are basically packet magic something. You can turn all of those into melee swings. All right. So that is War Mage and Spell Sword. Spell Sword is if you want to turn, if you want to be doing magic stuff through weapon swings. That's what it's good for. All right, Fighter Devout. We've got 2 on here. They're both sort of combat focused in different ways. So we have the Fate Sealer first. So Fate Sealer is if you want to be the most effective against the things you're fighting, right? If you want to maximize your efficacy, learn what energies work best against different enemies and stuff, Fate Sealer is a good list to go with, right? So as a basic, they get a lone self magic energy enchantment, and that's any of the 4 energies that are in the core rulebook. There is a note, there's a caveat on this one though, right? That the enchantment only lasts. The enchantment only functions for the caster, right? So if you can't enchant your weapon and then hand it off to somebody else. The enchantment ends at that point. But yeah, once per minute you can enchant one of your weapons with one of those energies. As a complex, you get a flurry of disables, so that's 5 melee disables, right? Disable, 5 of them. At 3, you get a packet magic curse, so you need an incant for that one, right? I curse you with vulnerability, magic curse. So that's 1 minute. The target takes an additional point of damage from all damaging attacks that affect them. As an ultimate, they get a flurry of maims. So an upgrade to like, right, the complex is a flurry of disables. The ultimate is a flurry of maims. Maims are much more difficult to get cured, and that is also true against enemies and monsters. And then as their attribute, anytime you deliver a death strike to an enemy, you can do it as any energy type, as any of the 4 energy types, regardless of whatever enchantments on your weapon or anything else that's going on. You can just always do that. And then champion. Champion is a little more focused on on a support role. They do get melee 2 silver as a basic, which is good. Silver can be costly to come by for folks, right? It's like usually shows up as like a complex level ability in order to get. So just being able to like swing a 2 silver attack at something to see if that's effective can be really valuable from a sorry. All right, we're good. All right. But yes, just being able to do silver on the fly, and even being able to do it, let's say, like in a place where like people can't cast magic, right? You can just do it, and sort of nothing can turn it off. So there's like some of the stuff is you're like, oh well, that's like isn't like the Fate Stealer weapon enchantment better? And it's like, well, it can be. It sort of depends, right? We're gonna put you all in all kinds of wild scenarios. So and right, and we're like very familiar with what abilities people get, and you know what things like would and wouldn't be useful in different scenarios. So that's all kind of like baked into the game. So it is useful. It will be good. Maybe not all the time, right? But that's why you have other basics that you can use too. But sometimes this basic might be really good. So champion gets a touch magic refresh all basic. So cast a spell, right? 7-syllable incant as a touch effect. You can spend a complex to give someone all their basics back. Situationally, really good. Also a lone quick cast touch magic heal all. So just right, you just magic heal all on someone once an hour as a complex that heals all of someone's hit points. Doesn't do anything for any status effects that might be in place on them, right? Because heal is for hit points, cure is for status effects. But yeah, heal all is like heal all hit points. You do that to yourself, you do it to somebody else. Same with the refreshing all the basics. You could refresh your own if you wanted to. You do it for somebody else. Level 4 is a very powerful defensive ability. So counter curse, counter death, or counter harrow. It can be used as any of the three of those. And so for counters that apply against specific effects, right? So like curse, death, harrow are effects. That would mean that you can counter a melee hit or backstab, right? Because it doesn't say not. So you can counter a melee hit for curse, death, or harrow for somebody within reach of you. You do the same for a packet for someone within reach of you. If for some reason there was a gesture effect for one of these, probably not going to happen unless there's like a very specific instance going on. Then you could counter that if you were within line of sight of the target and you could hear the effect happen, right? You call, and the call would be right if the guy next to you gets hit with magic curse, you call counter curse, right? They get hit with death, or you get hit with death, right? You can call counter death. Same for harrow, right? You call counter harrow. So this won't work against area effects or social effects. Those have to be countered by counter social or counter area specifically. But for and touch effects can't be countered. You don't want like, we won't come out with like a counter life effect and you're like doing like a touch spell to like resurrect somebody and we're like, no, I was standing here, so no. No, that's like we're not doing counter touch effects. And so then at level 5 they get silver enchantment tenacity. So anytime they perform a silver enchantment from any source, whether it's an ability that they have, right, like from a spell, or it's an item, that does it. If a level 5 champion is the one that does it, then they can do it and then do it again within 10 seconds for free. Anything with silver enchantment in it would qualify for that. So also very good, right? Because silver enchantments can be expensive to use, right? Normally, like a complex ability, you're doubling a complex, which is valuable. All right, rogue. There's mage again. Making another note here. Where is it? There we go. This is page 31. Same as page 29. All right, cool. Get that fixed after this. All right, so what do we have now? All right. Also says rogue. It should be scoundrel magic user. Man, type. Cool. All right. So, Lore Master is our sort of less combat oriented one, right? And then Spell Thief is our much more combat oriented one for this. So Lore Master gets a number of unique things that don't show up anywhere else in the core rulebook. And that's yeah, it's some of it's really really good, but also right, it's sort of like less direct combat, oriented. All right, so as a basic, alone resist to a dispel effect. So dispel is one of our more complicated effects. Dispel specifically only removes beneficial effects, right? So that's sort of where we start. That's like our base, right? If you get hit with a dispel and you have any beneficial effect on you in any of our like temporary beneficial effect categories, right? So a bestowment, any of your 2 bestowments, you can have 3 grants. You can have 1 for hit points, 1 for armor, 1 for a defense, 1 for like a resistance. So those are 5 possible beneficial effects, and then also weapon enchantments also count as beneficial effects. So these are like our 6 categories of like beneficial effects. Dispel, if it's just dispel, it'll remove one of those of your choice that you have on you, right? So you're like, oh, I have like 1 temporary hit point, but like 5 points of armor and a dodge bestowed on me. Then like, and you just get hit with like magic dispel. You could be like, all right, it's taking my 1 hit point, right? Like my 1 hit point's going, and I'm going to keep my 5 armor and my dodge. Now, if you get hit with like dispel grant, then it has to be one of your grants. In this case, right, you can still have the hit points go because your hit points and your armor are both grants. Could be dispel bestow, in which case, in this example, you only have a bestowed dodge, right? Everything else you have is a grant, and so your dodge goes. Or you could just spend the dodge against it if you wanted to just sort of out of spite. Or maybe there's another reason, for you to do it or something. But and then also you could get targeted with dispel enchantment, in which case, yeah, we'll sort of tackle that later when we talk about it. But yeah, dispel enchantment, right, would take a if you have an enchantment on a weapon, right? If you have 2 weapons and each have an enchantment, you get to pick which one goes. But it'll take one of the enchantments away. And then I'm going to double check the effect chart here real quick. Okay. Currently, the rule system does not allow for the dispel all call, which is fine because it would be more useful against players than against monsters and enemies. So that's probably why we didn't include it. So yeah, just dispel takes 1 effect, right? Dispel enchantment, dispel grant, dispel bestow would target those specific things. So this lets you resist a dispel, so you can like protect your good bestowment that you have. Right? Magic user path gets the ability to bestow themselves with a like refresh all basic, with a self refresh all basic. So you can protect that for a basic now if you're a lore master. So as a complex, packet or touch magic malfunction. So malfunction is like malfunction is an interesting effect because it doesn't just do a thing, right? Malfunction does things to constructs and machines. So if it's an enemy and you think you might be able to malfunction this enemy, which works on like non-living things, right? Like sort of constructs and machines and stuff. Then malfunction will do something to it, and it may not do the same thing all the time, but each creature, and then even within that creature, like malfunction could do a different thing. But there is like a set list of things that we have that it does. It doesn't do like a random thing, but it does different things, but things that are in line with like what a complex effect would do. There's also a chance that you could encounter like a plot card in a module, or just sort of in general, you can encounter a plot card that's like says like if you use the malfunction effect, like open this card, right? And then like a thing might happen. So it would either be a plot card or against an enemy, right? There's not Our expectation isn't that like you'll walk up to everything you see that could be a machine and like try to malfunction it blindly. Um, but like having malfunction could open up options. Specifically, like in probably mostly like in modules and stuff, or if you're interacting with like constructs and stuff, then malfunction could have an effect on them. Um, at 3, they get touch, magic, grant resist psychic. So resistances specifically against psychic effects are difficult to come by, at least in the rule book. There's like some other stuff that y'all will learn about related to to psionic powers and all of that good stuff. But this is the only place in the rule book I think that you can resist psychic. Does Mystic get a thing? Let me double check real quick. It's entirely, they might get like resist psychic as a complex or something, but they're also like the psychic list in the rulebook. So let's see. Yeah, okay, but it's at level 9 and it's also a complex. All right, but it's resist psychic. All right, so Mystic gets it too. But this lets you just like give a passive psychic resistance to yourself or to somebody else for a complex. Now, counter area. This is very special, right? Because all of our previous examples of counters, we've said over and over that you can't use them against area effects, like specifically, right? Specifically, counters are not usable against area effects unless it's counter area, which this is. And this is any area effect that happens, right? This could be like the enemies are trying to heal each other, right? There's like a guy out and he's like, to all undead within the sound of my voice, like magic heal 5. And you're like, counter area, absolutely not. As long as you are inside the area of effect, you can call counter area. So like if it's all within the sound of my voice and you heard the call, or like, if somebody's like, oh, like to all within 10 feet, like I do this thing, and you were further than 10 feet away, then you couldn't counter area it. You have to be inside the area of effect in order to counter it. But this could be like environmental hazards, like in a module. This could be, an enemy making an attack. This could be an enemy trying to do something beneficial to their allies. You can spend an ultimate, call counter area, and just put a stop to that thing altogether. And then at level 5, we see another tenacity that works on consumable items, but in this case, it's for level 1 scrolls. So level 1 scrolls are going to do things like like magic 2 damage, but like you can spend your scrolls twice. As long as they're level 1 scrolls, you get 2 uses out of them. And again, they'll say level 1 scroll on them. I will find a way to show these item cards. We went through the trouble of making them and having them printed. We will show them. All right, on to Spell Thief. Spell Thief, again, right, is our more martial-oriented scoundrel magic user prestige path. As a basic, any magic effect that hits you, you can reduce to 5 damage for a basic. So might not seem great until you like get hit with a death and used up all your dodges. Instead, you can, even if you have like 1 hit point left, you call reduce to 5 damage and just hit 0 hit points instead. So it's not like an all the time answer to everything, but it's sort of like your emergency dodge roll to magic effects. So similar to the Rake being able to absorb poison, the Spell Thief can absorb magic to refresh all basics. So any magic effect that would target you, you can absorb it instead. So that avoids the effect entirely, and you get to refresh all of your basics. Let me just look at Rake real quick. Okay. Yeah. Right. So Rake absorbs it to give themselves a complex, and Spell Thief absorbs it to refresh all their basics. Cool. At 3, as a complex, Backstab Dispel, so that will dispel 1 effect in place of the target's choice. Situational, right? You would probably want to save your offensive dispel effects as a player until you see somebody like get bestowed with a thing or something along those lines happen, right? Like you would want to verify. Um, a dispel that targets something that doesn't have any effects that it could remove, the response should be no effect because it didn't have an effect, right? If it doesn't do anything, then it's no effect. And so we'll like have this talk with the NPCs and stuff too, but and you know, and with players, right? But if somebody's like, I don't know what that's gonna do, and then it will probably do nothing. So um but if you see something like, oh, like I grant you 10 hit points, or like I bestow you this thing or whatever, right? Like I bestow you like a big skill or something, then you know, that's worth like that might be worth dispelling off something. Um um Out as an ultimate, um backstab magic curse to self refresh all complex. So you have to successfully deliver a backstab magic curse, which is a great effect anyway, right? 1 minute, they take an extra point of damage from all numerical damage. And then if you land it and it works, right? It has to work. Then you can call refresh all complex and get all your complexes back, which is also awesome. So two great tastes that taste great together: backstab magic curse and refresh all complex. Is a very good ultimate. Um, and then at 5 as the attribute, this is sort of like, this is similar to the spell sword one, except this is packet magic as backstab non-magic. And so you turn packet spells into backstabs, and then the backstabs are become non-magical attacks that you're doing, largely because calling backstab magic 2 damage is a lot of words, and backstab 2 is not a lot of words. Or like backstab short pain and not backstab magic short pain, right? It's just, it gets to be too long. And honestly, cool that sort of like spell thieves also steal their own magic, right? You can sort of like turn your own magic into like not magic stuff too and repurpose it. So thematic, friendly, and appropriate. So yeah, spell thief, very fun, makes you real good against magic users. So go make enemy casters sad. All right, Scoundrel Devout. I swear to you, I will remove all of the references to the term rogue in here. Check for references to term rogue. All right. Get them. One of these days, the rulebook will be free of typos. Luckily, it's basically just typos that we're catching and not functional rules changes, which is cool. All right. Ranger. So here's one of the first instances we see of this in the rulebook. There aren't many instances of this out there right now. You'll see more as the game goes on of stuff like this. You can see that in the parentheses for cost for this one, it's BB, which means it costs 2 basics to use, right? You have 4 basics a minute, unless, you know, there's stuff that can change that, but not many things will change the number of like basics, complexes, and ultimates that you have access to. But so instead of spending 1 basic, you're going to spend 2 of them, but you get a backstab maim out of it. So as like a basic, so that's pretty good. It's going to be a good time. You're gonna enjoy having this. My sort of recommendation is, in general, is that if you have an ability that costs 2 basics, you should try to use it every minute, because there's a reason it costs 2 basics, and it's probably because it's like functionally worth like more than 2 basics, right? So, but you can only do this one once a minute, right? So once a minute, you can spend 2 of your basics to try to deliver a backstab maim. All right, so as a complex, you can grant someone resistance to the first disable or maim, and this is sort of like outside of our normal category, right? Is normally it's like, oh, like grant resist psychic, grant resist magic, grant resist pain, grant resist singular thing. This is like not modal, but it has like, you know, it protects against 2 different effects. So it'll protect the target against the first disable or maim, right? Not one of each, and the notes on there about it, right? So you say grant, resist, disable, or maim. And that's as a complex. Then they get a lone backstab 10 as a complex. Uh, that's also just really good. It's usually that's like an ultimate. So if you can pull off the backstab 10, then you get 1 per hour for a 10. Now we see this is sort of similar to the War Mage flurry, where we're seeing a flurry that grants melee and packet, right? So you get 5 of each. This will give you 5 melee magic roots, right? And they're all going to be quick cast, because magic flurries are always quick cast. But you do have to incant this first, right? There's a spell incant that sort of starts it up, right? Like I draw on the power to I draw on power to ensnare my foes or something, right? Yeah, we've got plenty of syllables. Right, and the 7 syllables is just like the minimum, right? You can go more than that. You can be like, oh, I call the power to ensnare my foes. Like that's great, cool. And everybody sort of knows what's about to happen too, right? It was descriptive and it makes sense. Then you get 5 melee magic roots, 5 packet magic roots. That costs an ultimate to do, and then this is I think like the one instance in the rule book of retain. And so what retain does is when you use an ability that qualifies for it, so in this case anything that's a backstab, and you miss all legal targets. So in this case that would mean like you either don't strike the enemy at all, maybe they turn at the last second and you hit them in the front instead of the rear, or let's say you call like a backstab maim, but you hit like their torso. You can call retain afterwards, right? Because what that instead does, right? If you call like a backstab maim and hit me like here, right? Like not in a limb, I'm going to take a point of damage, and normally your ability is just spent and gone. But with this, you call retain and you keep that ability use, whether that was from a bestowment or from an item or from, just a regular ability that you used, right? Let's say like, oh, I spent my 2 basics to do a backstab maim and I totally whiffed it. I can call retain and I get my 2 basics back. It lets you try it again, basically, or even in that instance, right, spend it on something else. So this is a very good attribute for ability use economy purposes, right? It lets you attempt backstabs for with less risk involved. So yeah, and then Seeker. So Seeker has like a special additional sort of like lore relevant aspect to it that's in the description there. Seekers like are well equipped to deal with malevolent entities. So right, so we have like worlds and malevolence and malevolent worlds and maleficers and all that stuff. And this isn't going to give you everything that you need, but it's going to get you started in the right direction. If you want to fight some real evil stuff, this is a great place to start. And also like there are seeker specific like ceremonies that can be performed to do certain thing, right? And it's called out there. But yes, so if you want to do like the like good guy, like specifically hunting after like the baddest bad things out there, this is a good place to be. So they get a lone return against fire, ice, or lightning, so against an elemental attack, and that could be from any source, right? That could be a weapon attack, that could be a packet. They get backstab 5 silver or fire as a complex, right? You pick it at the time you use, either backstab 5 silver or backstab 5 fire. As a complex at level 3, they can resist a rage, fear, or pain effect, and that's regardless of the source, even if that comes from like a area effect or something. Then they can resist it, whether it's magic or non-magic or poison or whatever, or elemental something. You can always just like have a resistance on hand for one of those things as a complex. Level 4, they get an area effect for magic for silver enchantment. So it's a spell that you have to cast, right? But it would be like, I whatever I call elemental. Uh, I conjure elemental luster, right? Or I conjure like elemental argentum or something. Um, and then you'd be like, to all within sound of my voice, magic silver enchantment, right? Give everybody a silver enchantment on it's like one per person, right? So oh no, I think it's just every weapon. Yeah, every weapon. I guess people people can not use it if they don't want to, but yeah, it would be every weapon within the sound of your voice, right? Yeah, yeah, it targets items and not people. So, and then at 5, you get tenacity for your backstab 2s and 5s of silver or fire. So a little bit harder to use 2 backstabs in a row, but I trust people to get creative. Doubling up your backstab 5s is a pretty good time. I think people will find a way to make it work. All right, next. I think these are our last ones. Yes. All right. Cool. So magic user devout. Again, mage is on here. It's not mage. It's magic user. So for magic user devout, we get sort of 2 very diametrically opposed approaches here, right? One is the Hierophant, which is like I have like all kinds of like positive energy, magic and stuff to throw around. And then the other one is the Herald of Malevolence, which is like I want to be a player and I want to explore like like the magic and powers and stuff related to like malevolent worlds and all of that stuff, but without like becoming like a maleficer, right? And there's like a note in the wiki about like player characters should not aspire to become maleficers because part of that whole process does a thing to you where like you can't really play your character anymore. So like we don't want players to be playing that. We want players to be fighting against that. And so if you want that experience though, you could do like the Herald of Malevolence or pursue other things in game to sort of like put yourself adjacent to that stuff and be drawing on some of those powers without like doing the things that make your character like no longer potentially heroic. And so, all right, so Hierophant, right? We have a double basic here for a touch magic heal 5, and you can do it twice in a minute if you want. Now you can spend 2 basics for a heal 5. Spend a complex to do a grant 5 hit points, so that gives somebody 5 temporary hit points, right? Can go above their normal maximum hit points. Touch magic cure flurry. So you cast the flurry in advance, right? Right. Let's see. I summon the power to cure ailments. Boom, or whatever. And then in the next minute, you get 5 magic cures. Right, they're quick cast. Right, it's a magic flurry, so they're quick cast. And what that does is just cure removes 1 effect of the target's choice. And so there's some effects that are more difficult to remove than others because there aren't cure effects that show up specifically for that effect. But this will work on any 1 effect of the target's choice. So generally someone will pick the most grievous effect in place, right? Or if somebody gets hit with like a lethal something, right? And they're like gonna die. And it's like somebody gets hit with like a lethal slow, and you're like, nobody gets cure slow. Well, Hierophant, and then there's some other places where just like a flat cure shows up. And so like this is very good, right? This is like real good. You're gonna counter 5 status effects. They could all be like 5 people could get cursed, and you're like, I'm gonna spend 1 complex and just cure 5 curses, or cure a couple of harrows and a curse, and then maybe hang on to someone. Oh, guy got paralyzed. Not anymore. So level 4, this is like a super powerful effect. It's a lone effect, right? So you do it once per twilight. It's a ritual, so it takes a full minute to do, and has to have an incant related to it as well, but it refreshes all ultimates for someone. So somebody spends 2 of their ultimates, then you spend 1 and they get 2 more. This is a very powerful effect. This is an effect that this is the kind of thing that we're going to keep an eye on. If we wind up with like 15 people playing Hierophants every game, and there's an extra 40 or 50 like ultimates in the game or something, then we'll find a way to do it. But This is like for people who are doing Mage Devout and really want to do like the support style thing. Um, we wanted to give them the ability to like, you know, give a bunch of their abilities away to somebody else. So we'll see what happens. It's also not really useful in combat because it takes a whole minute to do. Um, the odds of you being able to do that while you're like in combat aren't great. Um, Also, at 5 as the attribute that you get, like normally a life effect brings somebody back from the dead at 1 hit point. So instead, a hierophant that performs a life effect, whether it's from like the ceremony or that they get, that devouts get, or another ability that they have, or from an item, right? Anytime you would perform a life, it's life and heal all. So somebody comes back at full hit points instead of 1 hit point. So your ultimates, which is where life effects show up at, is ultimate, are going to be really valuable anyway. Right? It's like getting somebody back up at full hit points in the middle of a fight is very good. So so some things to consider. um all right. What All right, so now onto Herald of Malevolence. So Herald of Malevolence is basically entirely lone effects that are powerful. There are I will say now there are game lore implications to selecting this list and doing stuff with it. Right? This is supposed to be like an experience that lets you explore, right, some of this, like some of the darker stuff going on here. There's some of the darker corners of the game universe, and what that means. um, you read a little bit about malevolent worlds on the wiki too. They are worlds that have like functionally died, and have become sort of these like twisted caricatures of themselves. And that's where like this power is sort of this magic is derived from that sort of thing. Um, Lone Packet Magic 5 Fire is a basic. It's a complex as a basic. Magic 10 Fire Packet, it's an ultimate as a complex. Magic Fire Choke, it's a 1 minute long debilitating effect that basically shuts something off for a full minute. And then as an ultimate, you can throw Magic Fire Death. It's just a death packet. And then as the attribute, you reduce all pain effects. And so that means anytime you get hit with a pain, which will always be a short pain, 1 minute long pain, I don't think we have any. I guess it could happen. I guess if we're doing minute long paralyzed, we could do minute long pains, but pain like shows up as short pain basically everywhere. And the and yeah, so anytime you get hit with one of those, you call reduce, you take a point of damage instead. You have the option to do that, right? You don't have to. All right, so that's prestige paths. We can, if people are interested in looking at the other ability lists in the game and stuff, we did those in another video. I'm gonna scroll down a bunch of pages here to get to the effects list. We're gonna try to go through this relatively quickly. So here's like a brief description of the effects that will show up in the game, right? And again, the caveat to all of this is, right, these are combat effects. Anything can happen, and when it does, there will be a plot card accompanying it to describe what happens. But these are the things that will happen in combat that we expect folks to be able to react to relatively quickly and easily. All right, so animate. If you're dead and you get targeted with an animate effect, you become an undead creature under the user's control. You'll follow all of their verbal commands to the best of your ability. You have the number of hit points that you had in life, and you have no abilities. While you're animated, your fade count stops, right? Your 5-minute fade timer stops. And once you reach 0 hit points, the effect ends. And you cannot be animated again unless you are resurrected or go to death, right? You can't just be animated over and over again. You get animated once for a maximum of a minute. And you will fight to the best of your ability using no abilities and the hit points that you have. And then once you go down, you're just dead. You're just dead again, and resume your fade timer where it was. There can be. I mean, all right. you know I love to write a list. So the plan is yes. And when there, no one will have, what I'll say is nobody will be taking a prestige path that isn't published. There's not, there's like, that's like, there's like the trial system is for like people to sort of like go and adventure and earn like unique abilities for their characters and stuff. And that stuff will also eventually be, you know, shown. If and when there are more prestige paths, they'll be published and people will know about them. Um, so those are also things that people can look for. In fact, the two systems that I just described may even be connected to each other. There's also some other interesting ability list related stuff that we're not doing out of the gate because you know we're still sort of like learning this game together. But there are some cool things that we would like to give people the option to do. And because people can change their build every event, we can create new options without like locking people out of progress. Where it's like, oh, I spent like 2 years becoming this thing. Now, like this other option came up, and like that sounds cool, and I want to do that. Our system allows that to happen. Um, so I'm we're less concerned about introducing new potential progression later, because people can swap over to it and try those things. Um, but so the answer is yes. Of course, there's going to be more stuff. I love a new skill. I love a new list. I love people getting to unlock new stuff. So that'll absolutely be in the game. So the banish effect. The banish effect is here specifically to move people in and out of module space. Right? If you are in an encounter and you get hit with a banish, that tells you you're about to go on a module. We have a place for you to go to where a thing is going to happen. It can be defended against normally. So if you don't want to, I mean, so it also means there's a situation where like an enemy's out there and they're like, I'm going to send you to like the realm of fire and pain. And you're like, not if I have anything to say about it. And they're throwing like magic banish packets at you. You're like, I have a resist magic and a dodge. So I'm going to stop at least two of those. And also if you're in a module and you hear banish, then it's going to send you out of the module. And that might be like, you know, you jumped into the portal to escape the exploding fortress or something. Could also be like a guy, you know, a guy who's like, I don't want you in here. Why are you in here? Like, I'm going to try to banish you out of here or something. But yes, this is sort of our mechanic to like sort of on the fly we can get people in and out of module space, and just kind of communicate that with a single word. So that's the only implication for banish. Bestow, we talked about bestow. Bestow is for active abilities, active defenses, so things that you choose when you use them, or non-defensive abilities that you can choose when you use them, like bestowed attacks and stuff. The choke effect. Now we're getting into like our offensive effects, right? Choke means like drop to a knee or knees. It says drop everything in your hands. Technically, nothing in the book makes you drop a thing, but like you should be like, you know, like clutching at your throat, like pretending to choke for the duration. You cannot attack. You cannot use any abilities. You basically can't do anything. Confuse, for the duration you become unaware of your surroundings. If you also don't have any memory of what happened during a confuse effect, it's the only thing in the game I think that like modifies like people's memories. Also, well, I guess that's not, social effects, you become aware of it after the duration sort of ran out. But yeah, so confuse is like you don't know what's going on, right, for the duration. If you get attacked, then it ends, and that means like someone is in the process of swinging their weapon at you. You see a spell packet coming at you. It breaks the confusion effect, right? It's the intention is that like it like takes somebody out of combat and out of the situation, but also like, you know, they can be, the confusion can also be broken very easily. Cure, we talked about cure. It removes negative status effects. So if somebody says like cure root, and you're suffering from a root effect, it removes it. If someone says cure root and you don't have a root effect, you should tell them no effect, because it didn't do anything. And that'll give them their ability back. Just cure will remove any one harmful effect of your choice, right? Cure is for harmful effects. Dispel is for beneficial effects. specific like a diametric distinction that we're making there. And then cure all, which could show up, means removes all of your negative status effects. Any harmful effects that are in place on you are all removed, right? All of your limbs are maimed, and you're choking, and you have a lethal harrow. Cure all, you're back to good. Doesn't touch it, doesn't do anything for your hit points. That's heal, but gets rid of all those things. Curse we talked about. Target takes an additional point of damage from all attacks that deal damage. That's the wording there's incorrect. That will be updated because it only works on damaging attacks. Curse is only for damaging attacks. Okay, so anything that deals damage deals an additional point of damage to them. There's clarification somewhere in the rule book about that curse applies after everything else does, right? So like there's like reduce 2 and soak 2 on lists and stuff. So you get hit with a 2 damage attack. If you reduce it to 1 point of damage, then curse will turn it into 2 points, right? It doesn't turn 2s into 3s, and then nothing in the rulebook does things against 3s, and so now you can't do anything against it. No, it you apply your defenses first. Yeah, and that's right. It says the extra damage applies after each attack penetrates the target's defenses. So if you soak the attack entirely, right? You have a soak 2, you get hit with 2 damage. You call soak. You take 0 instead. Yeah, you take 0. You don't take 1. You don't take 3. You take 0. Death effect, right? Delivers a death strike immediately. It begins the target's fade count. Melee death has to strike the target's torso. Same for backstab, right? Melee and backstab death has to be a torso hit. I think that's our only required torso hit. I'm just gonna double check Harrow real quick. Yeah, Harrow's not, just death. So if you do hear, right, if there is like a weapon delivered death, it has to be a torso hit. Disable makes a limb unusable for the duration, either 10 seconds if it's a short disable or a minute otherwise. Unusable arms can hold items, right? Like I was saying before, nothing makes you drop an item. There's no disarm effects. There's no shatter effects in the game. So you never have to drop a weapon. You don't need to like drop your nice expensive weapon on the ground. This also, right, there's no weapon pinning, you can't kick people's weapons or throw them away or whatever, right? This just sort of removes that entire option, because that's not the kind of game that we're looking to run. So I have my sword in my hand. My arm gets hit with a disable effect. I drop my arm to my side. I don't move it, but I can still hold my sword, right? I can't do anything with it, but I can keep holding it. And the same thing if I have a shield strapped to my arm and this arm gets affected by a disable or a maim or something, the arm hangs at the side. I can't do anything with it. Technically, the shield will protect the area that it's covering, right? But that's not really going to be that helpful now, right? Because it's not up in like your general, right, torso vicinity. It is protecting a much smaller portion of you, like to the lower side of your body. Unusable legs cannot be stood upon. If you have one unusable leg, you are kneeling but can still like move around like on your knees and stuff. If you have 2 disabled legs, you can still kneel, but you can't move that way. You'd have to like crawl around on the ground. Yeah. Dispel we talked about, right? You can dispel, grant, bestow, enchantment. You can technically target that further, right, to be dispel armor, dispel hit points, because those are subcategories of grant. And if no effect is stated, then it's one beneficial effect of the target's choice from the categories of enchantment, bestow, or grant. Drain. I want to dispel people's concerns. I think it is important for drain to exist in the system. It is not something that will show up frequently, and there are very specific instances where I want this effect to exist. Drain takes away your ability uses without you getting to use them, which is, I acknowledge, the least fun thing that could happen to you. But there are instances where we need to be able to control how many ability uses people have for like game design reasons, right? So you can imagine a situation where you enter a place and you lose all of your abilities and then have to earn them back as you proceed through stuff, right? This is why the drain effect is there. Every once in a while, a very, very mean enemy that might also drain some of your abilities away. And and that is supposed to be a scary moment, but it will not be a common moment. I promise that. But so drain is out there. It will always be accompanied by at least some other word with it, right? If you hit with drain basic, it spends one of your basics that you have left. Drain complex would use up one of your complexes. Again, if you don't have them, right? If you're like, I don't have any basics and I get hit with drain basic, you should call no effect because it doesn't do anything. Anytime an effect does nothing to you, you should call no effect. Um, and it could also be like drain all basic. Then it takes all of your basics away. Drain all complex, or just drain all takes all of your basics, complexes, and ultimates. Again, we are hyper aware of exactly what kind of gameplay drain can create, and it is a tool in our arsenal that has a very specific place. I promise. Enchantment we talked about. For 10 minutes, it provides an energy option for abilities used with that weapon. So what this really means is that uncalled weapon strikes will never have an energy type attached to them. Your basic strain, can you restore them with the tallies their durability? Inflict 2 to restore all basic. Yes. So you can restore your basics by drained abilities come back normally, right? So like I have all of my basics, I get drain all basic. My 1 minute timer starts. After the minute, I take my 3 seconds and I get my basics back. Or any other ability that refreshes ability uses will right, will do that. It just removes them temporarily. Give me 1 second. No, drain doesn't have a duration. It's an instantaneous effect. All right. If so, in an instance like that, where we might be like, you might like go on a module or something, we might hand you a plot card that's like, your abilities don't normally refresh here. Like that could happen. But that sort of falls into the realm of like anything can happen. These are like our quick and dirty like combat effects that will show up in combat that like we're expecting folks to be able to generally respond to without any without anything weird going on. All right. Cool. All right. Back to enchantments. So for enchantments, right, for 10 minutes, you get an option with any weapon ability you use, any melee or backstab ability that you use to add that energy type to it. Uncalled weapon strikes are never made with an energy call. You'll never just be calling fire, silver, ice, lightning, whatever, and enemies won't be doing that either. But if I have a fire enchanted sword and I'm about to use a melee 2 damage, I can call 2 damage. I don't have to use the enchantment. The enchantment's optional, but I could call, instead of 2 damage, I could call 2 fire. If I use a disable, I can call disable, or I can call fire disable. And then that also applies to death strikes that you perform, right? You can do death strike 1, death strike 2, death strike 3. You, with a fire enchanted weapon, you do fire death strike 1, fire death strike 2, fire death strike 3. Make yourself familiar with what things can and can't do energy death strikes. Enchanted weapons do energy death strikes, and packet abilities of an energy type do energy death strikes. You can't just having like a melee, if like the melee 2 silver that we saw before on champion. That's not, you can't perform a death strike with that. You can do it with packet energy attacks. You can do it with enchanted weapons, or if you have a special ability, right, like Fate Sealer hat can always do energy death strikes. That's just like those are the things that allow for it. What else? All right. Expose will very rarely show up, but it's a thing that It's probably honestly a thing that as players you will use more than we use on staff side. But basically, the target of an exposed confirms or denies that they are the stated thing or possess the stated like trait or something, and that would be very apparent to you. Like if it was a thing that applied to you, it would just be there and would make sense, right? It would like be words that are on your character sheet somewhere. Um, or like specifically related to like a plot, you know. So this will show up rarely, but will show up at some point, and will probably be a thing that people really care about at some point too. So the fear effect, you have to, for the duration, the target attempts to remain out of line of sight of the user, right? So you like get to a place where you can't see them. If you're unable to do it, once you do that, let's say you get hit with a 1 minute fear effect. If you're able to get out of line of sight of them and spend 10 seconds out, then you can like, and it has right 10 uninterrupted seconds, right? Our same uninterrupted rule counts, right? Nothing attacks you. You're not running anymore. But if you're away for 10 seconds doing nothing else, then you can like cure your own fear effect. If it's a 10-second fear effect, then you're just like spending 10 seconds trying to be out of line of sight of them. So if you cannot or decide not to retreat, then you have to cower, and you cannot make attacks while you're under the fear effect. But you can use other abilities. Like if you have the ability to cure a fear effect, you can cure your own fear effect. But no attacks during the duration. And yeah, if you can spend 10 seconds away during a 1 minute fear, then you can get rid of it on your own. Flurry, we talked about, gives you 5 free uses of the named ability. These are not considered bestowed abilities or anything. It's just sort of like an active, like you have like a flurry active. Can you have multiple flurries active? I guess you could. I don't see why not. But yeah, it's sort of just like is an extended ability use, right? You get like a minute and you get 5 uses. Grant, we talked about, it's hit points, armor, or resistances. It's always passive, right? Hit points are passive. Armor points from Grant are passive. And resistances that are like Grant resist magic. You would call resist to the first attack that hits you that has the word magic in it. Granted, resistances don't go off on beneficial effects. Right? Somebody's like, it's like magic heal 2, and you're like, oh, there goes my resist magic. No, it has to be an attack. So specifically, it's going to be stuff like beneficial area effects and beneficial touch effects, beneficial gesture effects are going to get through that. And you'll know if it's like, you know, if you're like, oh, like this helps me, then you know, then it doesn't set off the grant, the granted resistance. Harrow, the next time the target takes hit point damage, it reduces them to 0 hit points. The fortitude ability that fighter gets at level 10 is a very good defense against Harrow. We'll put it that way, right? It is a counter to Harrow. It does the thing you would want it to do against Harrow, because so I have Harrow in effect on me, I get hit, and I don't have any armor points, I don't have any resistances, I don't have anything. I get hit, and I take a hit point of damage. I had 10 hit points. I take a hit point of damage. I go to 0 hit points. The Harrow effect is gone now. Harrow did its thing. I have access to Fortitude. Fortitude says if I hit 0 hit points, I can call Fortitude and stay up at half of my maximum hit points. So I took a Harrow, then I get hit. I have 10 hit points. I get hit with a Harrow. It affects me. I get hit for 1 hit point. Harrow effect goes away. I hit 0 hit points. I call Fortitude, and I am up at 5 hit points. So Fortitude is a good answer to Harrow. We'll get to the exception to that in a second, and it's an exception that makes sense. So heal, like we said before, heal does hit points. If you have like a self heal ability, you have to be conscious in order to use it. You have to be conscious to use any ability except for like your granted resistances. If you're like unconscious or unable to use abilities, then like that's like a passive defense that's still there in place, but everything else you can't use. Heal all restores all of the target's hit points to whatever your maximum is on your character sheet. Identify lets you read a single card that says secret on it. So you will see these around during events. Scoundrel and Magic user get the identify ability. And so if you see one of those cards and you have identify, you can fulfill the requirements of it. I think they're both short rituals, so 10 uninterrupted seconds. Then you can open up the card and read what's on the inside. Then you can either close the card. This says like flip it over face down, but like they're like folding cards that open. And so you can either close it back and put it on the secret side, and then if somebody else wants to read it, they have to do that. Or you can leave it open. You can leave it identified and then be like, hey, everybody should come take a look at this. And then like it's open and anyone can look at it. Inflict is a modifier to damage, and it means that the damage cannot be reduced or soaked. It shows up like on poison effects, like blade poisons that people can make are like inflict 2. And so, right, that can't be reduced or soaked, which is good. Just a reminder, so reduce is shorthand for reduce to 1 damage, and then soak is shorthand for reduce to 0 damage. Just like those are the most common ways that those are going to show up. But it's also possible that like you hit something and it's like reduced to 5 damage, or reduced to you hit something with a maim and it calls reduced to disable. Right. Those are all possible reactionary calls too. Lethal is lethal modifies another status effect and makes it so that if that status effect is not cured at the end of the duration, you die. So here it's like lethal slow causes the slow effect for a minute, and if you don't get that effect cured, then at the end of the minute you die. So this only works with effects that have durations, right? So maim is until removed, virus is until removed, and stuff that's like instantaneous, like drain. There's like lethal drain is not a call, and like lethal maim is not a call. Lethal disable is a call, and disables are much easier to cure than maims, so that's great for everybody. Everybody likes that. So the exception here is lethal harrow. So lethal harrow means that the next time the target takes hit point damage, they die. And it's so lethal harrow, you want to not get hit for the duration, and you could get it cured, but if you don't get it cured at the end of the duration, you're fine. The condition for lethal harrow to go off is taking hit point damage. And so Fortitude does not work against lethal harrow, right? I said there's going to be an exception. So lethal harrow, Fortitude does nothing because you're dead, right? It's not that like you hit 0 hit points, you died. And dying and reaching 0 hit points are sort of different triggers. If you had something that triggers like when you die, then that could happen. So life effect, right? Brings somebody that's dead back to life with 1 hit point. We talked about that earlier. Maim makes a limb unusable, like we talked about with disable, but maim is until removed. But like devout gets like cure maim like out of the gate. It just takes time to do. Malfunction we talked about, right? Usable against constructs and machines. So you'll either use it against a construct NPC or a machine that has like a malfunction card on it, and it will produce some sort of like specific effect. Nausea for the duration. Lethal Heroes, exactly right. Lethal Hero is supposed to be a scary moment, right? So like, and probably more often than not, it's going to be like a short lethal hero, right? So you have like 10 seconds of, oh my god, don't let me get hit, right? Yeah. So so nausea prevents attacks and ability use, but you can still defend yourself. So no attacks, no ability use. You could run away, and you can defend yourself, right? But no attacks, no ability use for nausea. Pain is drop to a knee, no attacks. So does not prevent other ability use. So you could like use a cure. So like nausea, you can't cure nausea yourself, right? Because it prevents ability use. But for pain, you could like cure pain on yourself. You could even like heal somebody else. You just can't make attacks. And so for both of those, you can still defend yourself. Paralyze, no body movements at all. It prevents all ability usage except for non-magic self effects. So if you have like, I don't know, like um, self cure paralyze, right? You could use that, right, to cure the paralyze. Or like you know, short ritual self psychic cure paralyze, right? And you're like, oh, I got paralyzed for a minute, but like I can use my mind powers to spend 10 seconds curing a paralyze. Rage, you attack the closest conscious creature for the duration. You're not required to use abilities if you're under the rage effect, but you can. Rage does not mean to like go crazy and fight in any sort of unsafe manner. It just makes you attack folks. That's a reminder that we will make often. Um, refresh is the opposite of drain, right? So refresh gives you ability uses back. If something is like, oh, refresh basic, you get one basic back. Refresh all basics gives you all of your basics back. Same for complexes and ultimates. The refresh all call gives you all of your basics, complexes, and ultimates back. Repel, the target must retreat to at least 10 feet away, right? If they're able to, right? If they're like backs against a wall or something, then that's the best you're gonna get. And then for the duration, they can't move towards or make melee attacks against the user, but they can stand their ground at that point, right? And before the user makes any kind of attacks against the target, they have to like acknowledge and release the repel effect, right? So so I'm gonna fight, right? Me and a couple of other people are fighting some monsters, and I get hit with a repel. I retreat to 10 feet away from the user of that effect. At that point, nothing will force me to move anywhere, right? I can stand my ground now. I can't make attacks against the creature that used repel on me, but I could attack the other things, right? And I can't move closer to them, but I could like, you know, stay like equidistant. And if they come closer to me, I don't have to retreat further, right? Fear is the like, oh, like try to break eye contact, right? Um, repel is like push you away to a certain point, and then like if I stay right, if I stay away from you, like you can't come closer to me, but like you can still, you know, go and do other stuff. And then if I want to attack you, I can't just like run up on you and be like, haha, I got you because you were trying to stay away from me. No, I have to be like, I release my repel, and then I can pursue you again. um we believe that sort of gameplay loop makes for better combat experiences. I think people will see that as well. The root effect requires the target to keep at least 1 foot, chosen when affected, stationary. You could do both feet if you wanted to. If you do both feet, you're not cheating. That does include spells. Yeah, you shouldn't be throwing spells at. You shouldn't be throwing. You shouldn't be making ranged attacks at the user of repel if you are the repelled person, and the repeller should not be throwing packets or ranged attacks at you for the duration, right? It's sort of like your focus is supposed to be spent on maintaining distance from them, and so that's like, right, that's like your interaction between the two of you now is like your dance, not attacks. And if it's going to become attacks instead, then the user of the effect has to be like, all right, we're done doing the repel thing, we can attack each other again. That's like if it doesn't make you immune to each other's ranged attacks, right? If I like throw a packet at the guy standing in front of them and he moves out of the way and it hits them, then that's fine, but like you shouldn't be aiming for them. It's really just like, in a lot of it is like intent, right? The intention is like to sort of stay away from each other, and then when that's done, then you can fight again. So root, keep at least 1 foot, chosen when affected, stationary for the duration. So that does mean you can like sort of pivot around a little bit. And so like if somebody like sort of comes up behind you, you can like get a bit of a turn going at least, so you're not just like, right, like the basic like root skill isn't just like, all right, now all three of us get behind this guy. Silence, right, prevents verbal noise for the duration, but also prevents all magic effects. which is like all abilities, anything with the word magic in it, you can't use while you're silenced, even if it's quick cast, even if it's whatever. You still use psychic, poison, other stuff, but anything with the word magic in it is turned off for the duration of silence. Sorry, not turned off. It cannot be used for the duration of silence. Sleep, target falls unconscious for the duration, can take no action. Hit point damage or pain effects wake them up. Sleeping creatures are considered helpless. You can deliver a death strike to them if you're so inclined. The slow effect makes it so that the target has to keep at least 1 foot on the ground for the duration. That's just our way of saying that if you get slowed, you can't move faster than a walk. You can speed walk, I guess, if you want, but can't move faster than a walk. And you shouldn't really be jumping anyway while combat's going on, so definitely no jumping. The suggestion effect is all of the implementations that we currently have for it are as a social out of combat effect. It could show up in other ways, I guess, but the basic pitch is that you present a plausible fact to the person that you use suggestion on, and they treat it as truth for the duration. So if the target doesn't want to do it, or it's like, right, so we don't have any kind of like domination, charm, control, anything that makes somebody do like what you tell them. We have like animate, which is like a combat thing that's like, go fight that guy. And then like suggestion is like, there's a bunch of examples in the book for what suggestions intended uses are, which is like you're trying to get like in the door to the to like the secret hideout, and you go up to the guy and you're like, okay, I have like a short ritual, social suggestion. So like if I can like get this guy talking with me for 10 seconds, then I can right, then I can like use a suggestion on him and be like, oh, like the boss said like you got to let me in, and that's like right. And so it's like, okay, I did 10 seconds of like trying to convince you of the thing, and now the game effect solidifies, right, turns my role play into like a realized game situation. That's like the intention there, right? Is you're like, oh, or like you're on your way out and you're like, hey, like you never saw me, wink, like haha. That's what suggestion is for, and it's not for anything else. And if somebody ever uses a suggestion, also there's a note in the book that like players can't use suggestion on other players without the express permission, in the same sense that like all of our like sort of player versus player conflict like has to be moderated and stuff and agreed to by all parties. That's just like not a thing that should happen, right? You shouldn't, and players can't have their stuff stolen from them and stuff. And so this all sort of falls into the same categories here of like, like suggestion is like supposed to like, it's like on the performer like bard-ish list, right? It's like that's it. It does exactly the thing you would expect it to. There are social effects other than suggestion. Anything can be a social effect. Like social death could be a thing, right? Where it's just like don't talk to the death elementals, like because they'll just kill you or whatever. Like that's dumb, and we're not doing that. But no, we're not doing that. But there's a couple other instances right in the rule book. Brute gets a social fear, right? That's like your intimidate style, right? Like I spend like 10 seconds like trying to convince a guy that I'm scary enough that he should get out of here. And then naturalist gets a social poison sleep. That's like you like conjure like spores and like get them to go to sleep or whatever. And there's other ones that'll show up in the game too, but yeah, anything could be a social effect. Okay, telepathy is the next one. Telepathy allows for quote unquote silent communication between the user and the target for the duration. If you're doing that, you put like 2 fingers to the temple to let people around you know that like you're having a conversation that they can't hear. If you aren't sure if there's other people around while it's happening, you could be like out of game silently, and then like do your thing, right? You can also like, if it's like you and and your buddy in the room together, and you're like, all right, things are about to go poorly and I need to like silently tell you a thing, you can like use like the telepathy effect on them and then like do this and just like lean in, right? If you're both doing this and you're like leaned in whispering to each other or something, the expectation is that everyone will just kind of like that everyone will ignore what's happening there. And so that's what that's for. Um, just a couple effects left. So virus. Virus reduces the target's maximum hit points to half, rounded up. So if I have 10 hit points, I get hit with a virus effect. My maximum hit points are 5 now. So I immediately get reduced to 5 hit points. If I had temporary hit points, those can still take me over the 5. And temporary armor points can still take me above that number, but reduces my maximum hit points by half. And it lasts until removed. So these sort of like blanket cure effects that we've seen around are really good for this kind of thing. The intention is never that if you get hit with a virus effect that it will linger for the entire event. That is not the intention. At most, it should be hanging out until like the next like top of the hour where complexes come back. Curing viruses is like at the complex skill level. Weakness is one that we added recently to the rule book. I wanted it to be in here to let people know that it's a thing that is like part of the game. It will more often than not, it will be like sort of invisible and is a thing that like using an attack against enemies that they are vulnerable to could also inflict weakness. And it's not something that we don't have a call for like, oh, like increased to this, like we will be like role playing an effect, right, to let people know that things are more are doing more. Everything that does less will make like a reduce call for, right, reduce to whatever, or just reduce or soak or something, or resist. But when it does more, like, and also like you might be subject to the weakness effect too as players at some point. And so we wanted to get it out here. So no running, same as slow, right? Keep at least 1 foot on the ground at all times. And no ability use or attributes for the duration, but you can still use items. And that's like the item use thing is true for basically everything on here, right? So like when pain says and like nausea are like no ability use, you could still like use an item as long as it's not like some of them are like, oh, you can't make attacks, right? Like nausea's like you can't make attacks, so you can't use an item that is an attack, right? But you could like drink a cure nausea potion. And so that's like called out specifically in weakness because you can do everything normally except running and using your abilities, right? Everything else is fair game, but it's just like shuts off your ability use for the duration. And then the last one is withhold. Withhold pretty much also falls in that category of like will basically always be a short effect when it shows up. And if it is going to be longer than that, we will try to make a point to be like withhold 1 minute, just like as a reminder to be like, yes, we're intending to do that. And withhold specifically targets a weapon, and so you strike a weapon with it. You call like short withhold and hit a weapon, and that weapon can't be used to make attacks for the duration, which is basically always going to be 10 seconds, but you can still use it to defend yourself. And there's a note in the rule book that two-handed weapons, right, weapons longer than 46 inches, those weapons are immune to withhold effects. That's sort of like a bonus for fighting with like a single two-handed weapon. Those are immune to withhold. You call no effect. All right. Defense calls. We've gone through basically all of these though. Absorb, right? As a player, if you have a thing that does absorb, you can just call absorb, and like we know there's like a finite number of absorb things that players can have. When NPCs use it, when like enemies use it, we will generally be like absorb to this or something, right? To like give an additional indication of what's going on. Right, fire creature, you hit it with 2 fire, it goes absorb to heal 2, right? We sort of put the pieces together and figure out that the fire attack is healing the fire creature. Counter we went over. Dodge used against backstab, melee, and packet effects, have to have at least 1 useful leg. Fortitude, we talked about this. When you would be reduced to 0 hit points but are not dead, instead remain conscious and be healed to half your maximum hit points. And you can't benefit from fortitude more than once per minute. Regardless of whether you've had all of your abilities refreshed or whatever, this timer and the gesture effect time, the gesture ability use timer are 1 minute. They have like their own separate cooldowns. So just like be aware of that, right? Gesture effects are pretty rare. When players have them, basically you're like Mystic with like gestures, psychic healing, or psychic effect curing. Can't do that more than once in a minute. And then Fortitude you can't do more than once in a minute. And those are separate timers, but they're each like 1 minute timers. So the sort of like intention there is like, okay, I do that, and then like my next like basic refresh I won't get it back, but maybe like the one after that I will. Um, or if you like have like a watch on or something, and you're like, okay, like let me just make a quick note, like I fortituded, killed the enemy. Now let me like just make a quick check. All right, and then the next time I check, if it's been more than a minute, I know I can do it again. No effect and return are related to each other. Um, so no effect. If you hear no effect or return in response to an attack that you made, or anything that you did really, then it didn't work, but you still have the ability use, or you still have the item, or whatever it came from is returned to you as if it never happened. Return is a finite one, and if something calls return to a thing and you keep doing it, it'll eventually respond in a way that is not the word return, right? Something might have like 5 returns, right? Like a return flurry or something, and you're trying to do a thing, like a really nasty thing to it, and it's like, no, return, 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 return. Oh, I'm out. I'm either going to take the effect, or maybe it's immune to it, right? It might start calling no effect, but still, like in that instance, you still burned through all of their returns, which is good. So yeah, that's no effect in return. If you hear either of those, your ability's not used. Parry, used against non-backstab melee attacks and packet effects. You have to be holding a shield or weapon in the hand of a usable arm in order to use parry. Reduce, we talked about. Just the word reduce means reduce to 1 damage. Otherwise, things can be reduced to basically anything. So resist means your attack didn't work, but it was like a limited defense that the enemy had. Soak is just a shortened way to call reduce to 0 damage, right? Reduce is reduced to 1 damage. Soak is reduced to 0 damage. Stabilize is a defensive call. When you're bleeding out, you can regain consciousness at half your maximum hit points, and you have to wait at least 1 minute after you reached 0 hit points. The reference to like the bleeding state isn't really a thing anymore. So I'm just going to update that wording in there. We'll say that stabilize is used when you reach 0 hit points. Reach 0 hit points, but are not dead. Yeah, you cannot stabilize from a death strike, just from hitting 0 hit points and then laying there for a minute. Other abilities. Let's cover. So insight. There's 3 types of insight: blue, red, and golden. Blue insight gives an extra ultimate ability once an event. Red insight gives a free dodge once per twilight, and golden insight gives a free touch magic life once per event. They can also each be used once per event to improve a discover request, which is a thing that y'all can learn about during the first event. There will be a system that's explained to how that works, but it's like in-gamey and not necessarily beholden to the rules system. But that's the way to request to do like a gather information-y style stuff. Okay, I'm gonna do a 4-minute explanation of crafting. So create. when you get crafting abilities, you get either create or substitute, or specialize. Technically, let's just scroll up here real quick. The section's relatively short. So regular characters do not start the game with any crafting ability, but everyone can do it. Everyone can do it, and it doesn't cost skill points or experience or anything. We don't have any of that in the game. You get better at it by doing it during game, by doing the mini games, by collecting resources. There's materials. We have material cards that people will collect. There's 6 types of them, each that have 3 levels. In the crafting area, from the get-go, there will be recipes. There will be opportunities to learn more recipes. When more recipes are learned, they will be accessible to everyone. At least for like the general set of game items that exist. There might be like some special things that your character gets to do through crafting, right? That aren't available to everyone because that's like a special thing to your character. But in general, you will get material cards. They are 2-inch by 2-inch plastic cards that are reusable. We will be collecting everything that you have at the end of every event, all of your materials, all of your game items, all of your crafted items, all of your coins. We will have a bag. You can honestly put other stuff in there if you want. Like, don't like put food in there or something. But if you're like, I have like a like notes or like a letter or something, like I just want to put it all in here, that's fine. So you take your material cards, you go to the crafting area. If you have the level of artisan required to give you the create skill of the level that the item is, and you have the artisan specialization that the item requires. So like I want to make a healing, like a lesser healing potion that does like touch cure, touch heal 2. Then I need like a single level 1, I think, level 1 organic component. So if I have a level 1 organic tag and I have create 1, right, level 1 of create in apothecary, then I can sit down at the crafting station. I take my card, I take my material card, I put it in the box, the used material box. I perform the mini game, right? I pull a card and it tells me what to do for the mini game. I complete that. I take that. Part of it is putting everything back from where you got it, right? Be a good crafting neighbor and put everything back where you found it. You take that card that you just did, you put it at the bottom of the deck, so the next person will pull a different one. Then you're going to go to the box that has the completed item cards in it. These are different size than the materials are. These are the size of business cards, and so if you want an easy way to carry them around, you can get a business card holder or something sized to hold business cards specifically, right? We specifically sized them that way so people could get like a business card holder for you to store your created items in. You'll go into that box, you'll find the card for the item that you created. So these are business card sized reusable plastic cards with like cool art on them that I would like to show you. And I actually I will. I'll just like share my whole desktop at the end of this, and I'll show off some of the items. So you take your materials, you turn them in, you do the mini game, you get the reusable card. Now you use that, and then when you're done with that, you put it back in like the used item thing, and then that lets us go back and like recover the items and reuse them and stuff. We don't have paper tags for anything currently. At some point we'll probably have to, but we're really trying to not do paper tags to represent anything in the game, and also have things that are descriptive and just tell you what they are. Like the card tells you like level 1 this, right? So when you start the first event, you probably have no artisan specialization. You have nothing, right? So now if you get 5 level 1 materials of the appropriate type and turn them in, now you have level 1 in one of the 3 artisan specializations, right? You can only do 1 unless you took a specific vocation. Then you can do 2 of them, but you give up your subpath specialization forever for that. But being able to do 2 crafts might be cool. So if you get 5 level 1 organic components and you're like, I want to be an apothecary, I have them, go turn them in the box, pull out your character sheet, write down in the specialization area, write apothecary level 1, and now you're a level 1 apothecary, right? This whole process is all honor system. It is player driven. All of this crafting is real time. Anytime we do crafting anything, it will be a thing that you do during the event. You will never do a crafting activity between games. We will always have a thing for you to do during the event. These mini games are not the epitome of all crafting mini games that exist. They are just, this is the stuff that's in the rule book that's here for everyone to do. There is more stuff that we have planned. And so now on your own, now that you have, right, you're like, okay, artisan ability list, I got create 1 and I'm an apothecary now, so I can create potions and poisons. And so when I look at the recipes that are out there, and each of the 3 crafting artisan specializations will have like its own area, and we'll have two sets of props for people, so two people can be crafting simultaneously in each area. Um, and the mini games don't take that long to do, so don't like don't hog the crafting space. Um, but it doesn't take that long to make items either, and the odds of you being able to make like a stack of items at one time are relatively low as well. But as you complete these additional tasks, right, the one on here is to get to level 1 from level 0, right? You turn in 5 level 1 materials. Then once you've made 5 level 1 items, now you're level 2, right? And now you get the level 2 ability, which is substitute primary components. And so substitute is, if it's a higher number followed by a lower number, substitute primary 2 4 1 means I can use a level 2 organic component as, right, because substitute organic component at levels 2 4 8 and 10. Cool. So I can use a level 2 organic component as 2 level 1 components in a recipe. And so there's recipes that might be like, you know a level 2 and 2 level 1s, or like a level 1 and 2 level 2s, or some other configuration of stuff. And so this could be beneficial if you want to create specific sorts of items, right? um if you're like, oh man, we're going to like the fireplace, so we need a bunch of ice things. Let's take all of the components that we have and turn them into as many ice things as possible, because we know they're going to be useful to us. And so as you get through each of these activities, right, and just track all of your progress right on your character sheet, just write it in. And then when you turn your character sheet in at checkout, we will enter that information onto your sheet. And so your progress will be maintained between games. The same thing will be true for the trials system. That's another thing where just track your progress right on your sheet, and then we'll update it. Um, and so as you go through these different activities, you'll level up your artisan level. There is like sort of a hard stop, um, because there won't be enough recipes the first game to advance infinitely, right? And there won't be enough, material. There'll be a lot of materials floating around, and so lots of people will be able to level up a couple of times. You can definitely get to at least level 3. So in the first event, people will definitely be able to create level 2 items. Um, and yeah, that's pretty much it. You keep making items, you keep track of your progress towards different levels. Keep your eyes out everywhere for picking up new recipes, because they're for everybody. New recipes will mean a new recipe in the area. It gets like put in like the book or whatever, for people to use for recipes, and also will be accompanied by a stack of reusable cards that will go in the box for people to use, for people to pull items from when they make them. So yeah, that's crafting, easy peasy. um and at a certain point, right, once you get to like level 6, right, like you're leveling up like to level 6 is where you like specialize, right? Each of them like sort of branches off. You're an apothecary, you can be either an alchemist or a toxicologist. You're a scribe, you can be either a spellsmith for scrolls or a runesmith for runes. And then outfitter, right, becomes weaponsmith and armorsmith. And yeah, all that stuff will sort of like make more. You'll see the kinds of items that everybody can make. All right, that's what I've got for tonight. I'm just gonna pull up and see if I can't get the item cards to display reasonably. If I can't get the where is it? It just like really doesn't want to identify that this window exists. That's wild. Um, do I have something else I can open it with that it will recognize the window of? Jeez, let's see. No, no. Why would it? Wild. All right, whatever. All right. Um, let's see. I was just talking about organic stuff anyway. So we'll pull up this. Um, there we go. Let's pull up. What do we got? Sure, that should be fine. This one. This one. That. And that. There we go. All right. Yeah. So let me also pop open a character sheet. I can show you. It will make more sense with a visual aid. Let's see. That character sheets. Where's my like test character sheet that I made? It's not here. Interesting. Yeah, template it is. All right. That's what we're gonna get. All right. This is full of a little bit of formatting nonsense, but oh well. Oh, no. No, so you have to be playing the path combination. You can't do like you're saying, right? Like you can't do um devout magic user and then pick something from like scoundrel fighter. No, it has to be in the combination that you're currently playing. Um um cards. All right, so this is oh god, this looks potentially terrible. Whatever. I don't we're almost done here anyway. Oh, I know why this is. Oh, hold on. Yep. Yeah, no, definitely. That's on me for sure. All right. Okay. Anyway, so now that there's audio back, so this is a material card, 2-inch by 2-inch square. We're going to punch holes in the top corner of them so people can keep them on key rings. They're color coded as well, with the background color, but it also tells you right on the bottom too, what the level of it is, and what type of material it is. This is an outfitter usable item, right? It's a level 1 consumable. The item's name is Lesser Course Whetstone. It does a touch, bestow, weapon, melee 2 damage. Bestowments to weapons are used whenever you want, but a single weapon can only have a single bestowment or grant. Here is our Lesser Blade Venom. This is touch, grant, weapon, melee, inflict 2. Our Lesser Healing Potion, it's a touch, heal 2, or touch, cure, disable. Here's an Easement Rune, touch, quick cast, magic, cure, fear, or pain. And then our Magic Missile Scroll, a level 1 scroll, packet, quick cast, magic, 2 damage. So these are all, or touch, cure, disable. So these are all Easement Rune, touch, quick cast, magic, sized as cure, business fear, cards, pain, reusable plastic cards, and then our magic missile, so that we don't have to continue like a level 1 scroll. You never have to cut up paper tags. We don't have paper trash. So these are all from item creation. Now we go back to item use. They just all go back in the bin. And so these are all all right. Sized as business cards, reusable plastic cards, so that we don't have to continue like we never have to cut up paper tags. We don't have paper trash from item creation and item use. They just all go back in the bin and get used again. All right, there we are. Yeah, yep, that makes sense. It's OBS is being my friend tonight. It wouldn't capture just the image viewer. Just wouldn't do it. So I had to go down the rabbit hole and mess everything up. So yeah, the the consumable items size like business cards. So if you get a business card holder, if you want somewhere convenient to store them, and yeah, the other cards 2-inch by 2-inch square. Yeah, I had to mess with audio settings, and now it's going to be better. So that's cool. All right, that's it. That's what I got. Everybody gets like another 2 minutes to potentially ask some questions. Cool. All right, I'm glad that I was able to communicate that all out. Good. Yeah, so another minute or two. Otherwise, do your best to get things submitted by Saturday. I'm probably not spending that much time on Saturday looking at stuff anyway. But from pretty much from Thursday on out, 100% of my time is devoted to event prep. So if people have questions about things, please don't hesitate to reach out on literally any channel, on Discord, on Facebook, on through the staff email, carrier pigeon, smoke signal, your choice. If people are concerned that they're not going to get their stuff submitted in time, don't let that be a reason that you don't come to the event. We will get you into a character, and make sure that you can play the first event. The first event will largely not be centered around like personal plot for characters anyway. I say not centered around, I mean basically not at all, as everyone sort of enters the game world on even footing. There's so much stuff that we want to show all of you and have you all learn together and experience together that we have 8 weeks between the events, and that will be our chance to learn what all of you are interested in doing and want to be doing, and then create a sort of deeper experience surrounding your individual characters and all these new worlds and plots and stuff. Yeah, there's no merchant thing. There's going to be, we're trying a new way of distributing loot, basically. Um, and I don't know how it's going to go, but the hope is to more evenly distribute things across the game, and then let people talk to each other and have people get the things that they want. There's going to be a lot of stuff. We're going to be, the design is to be generous with the stuff that we give out so that people can do a lot of crafting. Um, and I think that will make it so that more people get to do, more individual people get to do more stuff. And I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But by design, there's probably not a lot of merchant stuff in general. We're trying to give you guys just piles of stuff. Um, and yeah. So some of it will sort of like develop value on its own. We do have some sort of like ballpark stuff to be like, okay, like this is generally worth like this amount. There's also, coin, there's silver and gold coins in the game, 10 silver to a gold. um so there's coin too. People will find coin alongside materials and stuff. People can turn that stuff into items in real time, so that's going to drive a lot of the, a lot of the market. There's a value on, the other thing is like, it takes real time to make things and like real work. Like, I mean, real work, like doing like a mini game, but like it's still a tangible amount of effort. So like, if you wanted to figure out what your hourly wage is for making items, right, with materials that other people are providing, you could do that, right? You can time and be like, okay, on average it takes me, you know 2.5 minutes to make an item. So that means I can make, like, whatever, 20, 2.5 into 60, 24 items in an 24 items an hour. um what is that worth, like, and then right, what's an hour of my time worth in coin? And then if I do one of those units, then what is that worth? 1/24 of an hour of income. What's the value on that? So I I don't, the hope isn't that somebody's like, I sit at the crafting area and I, like, work a job all weekend. But I can't stop you from doing that, but I would probably recommend against it. But yeah, there will sort of like, um there will like become a value for people's time that they spend on crafting things, right? Because it takes you real time to do it. um and yeah, and then some items will be worth more than others, and that's, we're trying to like work that into the system too. It's why not everything is like, takes like one component or two components, and why there's two types of components that each crafting list uses, right? Apothecary, alchemy, toxicology uses organic and elemental, right? The secondary components are rarer and worth a little more than the other ones are. Well, in some instances a little more, in some instances a lot more. And then once like folks start to get into like high level crafting, it's gonna be a whole different thing too, because then you're like making extra ultimates basically, which can't be, which is non-trivial to do. So yeah, we'll see. It should be a good time. We've got everything on hand ready to go. Now we're just gonna watch and see how y'all break it, and then we'll fix it. It's why we've got like a hard stop on artisan advancement for the first event, so in case things go a little out of control, there's at least like a stopgap in place for us to take some time to measure things out again. But all right, that's it. So like I was saying, starting on Thursday, um, from Thursday until next week, at the event, that's like 100% of my time is focused on it. So please tell people to not hesitate to reach out with questions and concerns. Um, I don't want people to not show up because they didn't get whatever character submission or something in on time. We have no explicit rules about not allowing people to rewrite characters and stuff, right? Because death counts don't, individual player character death counts don't matter. And I mean, I guess unless you want them to, you could say that you could decide that your character you're only giving your character a certain number of lives or something, but the game's not going to do that. But you can. I can't stop you. I can't stop you from saying once I've died 10 times, I'm done, or every time I die, I'm gonna like roll my own dice or something. Um, but but yeah. So people can come and just like play a character for the weekend, and we're not focusing on like people's personal plot and stuff. We're using that the first event as a way to showcase all the different kind of styles of content that we're going to be offering and what different kinds of stories are out there, and see where people's characters fit into it all, and then use that information and the 2 months between events to create this like bespoke experience moving forward for people as they attend more games, and we figure out what you all want to be doing and what activities people are most excited for. um, and then we can work those things into the stories, right? It's a big universe out there, and there's all kinds of wild and crazy stuff that we're going to be doing. So all right, thank you so much for everybody that came out and spent your time with me for the last office hours before the event. I won't be doing this again next week on Tuesday. I will be neck deep in prep for the game. But if people do run into questions for whatever reason, please don't hesitate to reach out. Like I said, um, otherwise expect more information. As we approach the event, we the like sort of sleeping arrangement spreadsheet should be showing up soon. We'll make sure that everybody is happy with their sleeping arrangements and stuff. Um, there's definitely enough beds for everybody. Um, and um, it's probably going to be rainy. It looks like it's just going to rain for the rest of eternity right now. So we've got indoor beds for people. We've got places for people to be dry. Um, and yeah, we'll post we'll be posting more information between here and the event. And that's what we got. We are super super excited. We have invested a crazy amount of time and energy into getting this game off the ground, and I just think it's going to be super super fun. I have not been this excited for a LARP in a very very long time. And so we're going to show up and tell wild ass stories together, and I can't wait. All right, so thank you so much everybody for showing up. I will be around for the next week and a half if people need anything. Otherwise, I will see you next Friday, the old Commons. Check in 6:30 to 9:30.